House hacking actually allowed me to live for free in Sacramento, which is a city in California. And as we all know, California is a very expensive state. So I was able to do this, and I'll teach you how you're able to do it essentially in any city in the world. Now, I'm not going to make any promises because there's a lot of variables that go into it, but generally speaking, true good house hack can be done in pretty much most cities in the United States. Now, one of the biggest concerns that comes up is what about your quality of life when you house hack? Because when you're dealing with housemates, you're worried about, okay, what if they're very messy? What if they don't get along with me? Those are the types of concerns that a lot of people have when they house hack. And so I'm going to go ahead and address those concerns. The first type of house hack that we will talk about is house hacking a single family home, which is basically what most people think of when they think of a house, where you live in one room, maybe it's the master bedroom, and you rent out each of the other rooms to housemates. Now, the biggest concern for this one is, of course, the privacy. The biggest way that I get around some of the privacy concerns is by making sure I buy a house that has a master bedroom with a private bathroom. Having that private bathroom is really key in making sure that you have your own privacy, you really don't run into the other housemates as often. In fact, at the house hack in Sacramento, I only run into my housemates every once in a while in the hallways or in the kitchen. Usually I'm not lounging in the living room, so most of the time I spend in the room. So there's actually quite a bit of privacy, especially since I have my own bathroom. Now, of course, there's houses where you might be sharing bathrooms. In that case, what I recommend doing is find one that has at least 3 bathrooms, so the other housemates can share the other 2 bathrooms, and then you can have a private bathroom to yourself as the landlord. So the other consideration to make sure that you have a good quality of life is obviously choosing your tenants wisely, which we will delve more into later in the video. But for me, I really target and find high quality tenants that are really clean. They value a quiet, clean environment, generally speaking. And I usually look for college graduate students and healthcare workers because those people are generally pretty serious about either getting their doctorate degree or they're very serious about their job. Their job requires long hours. And so they're out of the house most of the time, which means they only come home to basically eat dinner, shower, and sleep. And so most of the time, they generally are pretty responsible in terms of household chores and that type of stuff. Okay, now let's say you really value your privacy and you don't feel comfortable staying with housemates. Well, that's where a multifamily home house hack comes in. Now, there's multifamily home and there's also ADUs. So let me talk about multifamily homes first. Multifamily homes is basically 2 or more units. So there's something called a duplex, which is 2 units, something called a triplex, which is 3 units. And what it basically means is you have 2 completely separate units where you live in one unit and they live in the other unit. So you have complete separation from your tenant. The only thing that you actually share is usually the driveway and maybe the utilities. But other than that, they're essentially 2 separate houses that basically are right next to each other. So buying a duplex is a really great way to get started if you do value your privacy. I had a client who, with his wife, he lived in one unit and rented out the other unit of his duplex. I also had my brother who bought a duplex in Sacramento, California. He was able to basically stay in one unit and rent out the other as well. What's great about buying a duplex or a triplex is that the tenant in the other unit will actually cover a majority of your mortgage payment or even cover it fully. I definitely have some clients who bought a duplex and they actually have the other unit completely paying for their mortgage payment, miscellaneous expenses, utilities, that type of deal. So it can really work very well if you do still value your privacy. Now, there are different requirements for the down payment for a single family home versus a multifamily. Usually a single family home house hack, you can get in as low as a 3 to a 3.5% down payment. If you're doing conventional financing, you usually can go as low as 3% down with FHA loan, which is a special loan for those who have a low credit score or a high debt to income ratio. You can go as low as a 3.5% down payment. So imagine you're buying a $300,000 house, your down payment is only $9,000. Now, of course, you have closing costs and you have to buy furniture, etc. So that might be another $10,000 to $15,000, but the down payment is still only $9,000, which is a pretty good deal, right? But for multifamilies, usually they want a little bit of a higher down payment. So these change all the time. These requirements change all the time. But right now, usually a lot of the multifamilies require, or a lot of the multifamily home loans that you get will require a 5% minimum down payment. Now, it also depends on if you buy a duplex, a triplex, or a quadruplex. If you buy like a quadruplex, the down payment requirement may be higher. And again, these numbers change pretty frequently. Now, the last type of house hack is using an ADU house hack. So ADU stands for accessory dwelling unit. Typically, an ADU has a minimum of a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen or kitchenette, and kind of like a common space. Now, it's kind of like a mini home if you want to simplify it. But basically what you can do is stay in the ADU and then rent out the main house to a bunch of tenants. And those tenants almost very likely will cover the mortgage payment for you to stay at the ADU. Now, of course, that is usually a lower quality of life because the ADU will be a lot smaller than a normal size home, usually. But it is an option if you want to just get into real estate as soon as possible. Plus, the last thing about house hacking is you only need to really stay in a house for 1 year. So multifamily, single family homes, if you stay in it for 1 year, you are okay to basically move out after the end of the year and still keep your mortgage payments the same, the mortgage qualifications, everything remains the same. And so a lot of people, they will house hack a new house every single year. They'll maybe do a duplex and then they will get to a quadruplex and then they'll get to an 8-unit, etc. And so what a lot of people do is repeat this process every single year. Maybe they start off with a single family home and then they upgrade to a duplex and then a quadruplex and then so on and so forth. Now, the last thing you might want to consider is to potentially hire a property manager to handle the property for you. If you're dealing with a lot of issues and maintenance issues at the house, it might be a good idea to hire a property manager to manage those issues. If you don't want to pay a property manager fee, though, a lot of times what you can do is just have a really good handyman crew. Since you're at the house yourself, you can generally inspect the handyman work after they do the work. So what you do is you just have a go-to handyman who kind of handles all the issues at the house. And if it's like a larger issue, you might hire a more technical worker like a plumber or electrician. But as long as you have that team in place, you can really respond to and manage maintenance issues without it being very stressful and without it lowering your quality of life. Now, the next thing we should talk about is how to spot a really good house hack. The first thing I look for is how close it is to what I call hotspots. Hotspots could be like downtown, midtown, places to hang out. It could be colleges, hospitals, because I rent to college students and healthcare workers. I generally like to be as close to the college or the hospitals around the area as much as possible. And so that's why I get a lot of college students and healthcare workers. And then you want to make sure the house has a large amount of square footage. That part is super important because the more bedrooms that you can get at the house, the higher the chance that the tenants will actually be able to cover the entire mortgage payment plus expenses. Now, other key areas that you might want to invest in is nearby high-income jobs like tech workers, for instance. Silicon Valley is a great example where there's a lot of great companies that pay people very high income and allows them to basically be able to pay you the rent, and you don't have to worry about missed payments, late payments, or no payment. Now, there are a few other criteria that I look for. Obviously, the crime rate and how safe the area is. I usually go to crimegrade.org. That's a really good site for determining what the local crime rate is. But you can also, since you're in the area already, just ask around, ask some of the neighbors. What's the crime rate been like in this neighborhood over the last 5 years? How many burglaries were there in the last 5 years? You can talk to your friends or your colleagues in that area and ask them what are the go-to places that are the nice areas, but still very safe, are safe areas, and what are some of the areas I have to stay away from. So that's really important to do. Now, generally speaking, when you buy a house hack, we're not looking for Class A neighborhoods, which are the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme, best neighborhoods to stay in. We're really looking for more of like B class neighborhoods, because A class neighborhoods are going to be very, very, very expensive. And so it's just not going to make sense financially for you. Your mortgage payment is going to be super high, so your tenants are never going to be able to cover it. However, if you invest in B-class neighborhoods, which are generally very good condition houses, generally relatively new houses, not super old, not like 100-year-old houses, and again, in really good condition, then that's usually the property I go for, because you will still make your cash flow, but you're not overpaying for that property. Which leads me to affordability. You have to make sure, obviously, the house is within your budget and that the rental income that's coming in covers the mortgage payment and then some, so that you live for free, because that's the goal of the house hack, is to ultimately live for free while the tenants cover the mortgage and pay down the loan for you over time. And then finally, when you go to do the walkthrough, you want to make sure it's generally in good condition, that most of the major items have been replaced, like your HVAC, your roof, your sewage line. You want to make sure all of that is relatively new, or not over 30 years old, for instance. Because if they are really old, you might have to replace them very soon. So watch out for that. All right, so let's go ahead and go over how to do the math on a house hack. Now, the goal of a house hack is to, again, live for free, and the tenants are covering the mortgage payment and covering the loan, paying it off for you. So let me go to Zillow.com. That's where we start. And let's say I'm looking for a house hack in Sacramento. So I'm just going to type in Sacramento, California, and then we're going to take a look at the houses there. Generally speaking, I set up a couple filters when I'm looking for a good house hack. The first filter, of course, is I will say houses for sale, because I'm looking at houses for sale, not for rent. I'm going to set a price range up to $100,000 over my maximum price range. So a lot of houses in Sacramento nowadays are like 500,000, 600,000. So I'm going to go ahead and just to capture all the houses, I'm going to put $700,000, and just realize that you can always negotiate down the price of a property. I'm going to click on remove boundary here so I can see all the houses. And then for the bedrooms and bathrooms, I want to have at least 3 bedrooms and 1.5 bathrooms. That's just so I have something to work with. If I have at least 1.5 bathrooms, I can have at least 3 people per bathroom, a maximum of 3 people per bathroom. So if I have 2 full bathrooms, then I can have up to 6 people. Now, it's always not too difficult. I would say a lot of times it's not too difficult to convert a half bathroom to a full bathroom. So it's okay to buy a house that has a half bathroom that you intend to convert to a full bathroom. Usually the cost of that might be $8,000 to $12,000, up to $20,000. I've seen that happen before, but usually it's around the $8,000 range nowadays. So I'll click on apply, and then I'll go to home type, and I'll select houses and multifamilies. Those are kind of like the main 2 I look at. Townhomes are usually a little bit too close together for my comfort. They're very close to the next door house. Condos might have HOA, and so I really focus on houses and multifamily. I click on apply, and then I'll go to here, the more tab, and select no HOA fee, because it's really important that we don't have HOA, because they can control how many people you're allowed at the house. They can set their own rules, and it's another level of government you don't want to have. Now I'm going to scroll down here, and then I'll click on the square feet, and I will select 1,500 square foot or more. That ensures that I have enough square footage to add my additional bedrooms. Typically, if it's 1,500 square foot or more, usually you can get 5 or even 6 bedrooms at that property. Now, let's say we're using the strategy where we want to live at an ADU at the property. You can actually filter by that as well. And you just go under keywords and then just type in ADU. Again, ADU is accessory dwelling unit, and you can live in the ADU and rent out the rest of the house to other tenants. The ADU will allow you to have that privacy. So I'll click on apply, and you can see there's a few houses here that actually do have an ADU, like this one, for instance. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. It appears to have ADU in the garage, accessory dwelling unit in the garage. So you could potentially stay in that accessory dwelling unit and rent the rest of the house to people. Now, I like this one because it has a very large square footage. It's also pretty close to the nearby hospitals and Sacramento State University. Sacramento State University, I believe, is a 5 to 7 minute drive from this house. And then there's UC Davis Medical. There's a lot of Kaiser hospitals. So you can get really good healthcare workers as well as college students here. And it's also, because it has a huge amount of square footage, you might be able to get this to 7 bedrooms potentially. It has 3 full bathrooms here. So that means you can have 6 people share 2 of the bathrooms, and maybe you have your own private bathroom, for instance, in the ADU unit. So let's say I get 7 people, and I'm renting out to 6 others, and I'm the 7th person. Well, then we need to figure out what's the rental income on this property. So the typical calculation for that is you just take the number of bedrooms you're renting out. In this case, I'm renting out 6 bedrooms to 6 housemates. And I'll multiply the number of bedrooms I'm renting out by the rent per bedroom. So typical rent per bedroom in Sacramento is $800 per month. So 800 times 6 is $4,800 per month that this house could be potentially making. And Zillow's not the best at this, but it does give you an estimate of what the mortgage payment will be if you did a 20% down. Obviously, it's going to be a lot higher if you do a lower down payment, like a 5% down or 3.5% down. Which, you know, it's good because it lets you get in quicker into real estate, but the mortgage payment will be higher. But generally speaking, if you're renting it out for $4,800 a month, you should be able to cover your mortgage very well, because the estimated mortgage here is $3,396 per month. So this will definitely be a good house hack. Now, I could also remove the ADU keyword because you don't necessarily need an ADU, and then you can see the rest of the houses here. This one here is a multifamily. It's a duplex, and it has 4 beds and 2 bathrooms, and it's 1,500 square foot. So because it's almost 1,600 square foot, there is a possibility I might be able to get another bedroom in this property. Let's say I can get it to 5 bedrooms. I live in 1 room and rent out the other 4. Well, 4 bedrooms times 800 is $3,200 a month, and the estimated mortgage on this is $3,016 per month, which means I will actually cover my mortgage payment with the rental income. So this is a very good house hack as well. This is a duplex, and the other one is looks like a single family home with an ADU. In both cases, you actually can live for free at these houses in a very expensive state, which is Sacramento, and you can get away with putting a pretty low down payment too. So for instance, this house, 3% down on a $470,000 house is only $14,100. So I put $14,100 on it. I rent out the other rooms for 1 year. I live in it for a year, and then I move somewhere else. And this allows me to get in for, again, a very low cost and live for free for that year. So yes, plenty of houses that you can house hack in Sacramento, and pretty much every other city out there will have some neighborhoods that make sense in terms of doing a house hack. Okay, now let's go over the last step, which is finding high quality tenants for your house hack. It's very important to advertise where your target tenant hangs out. So if I am looking for college students, I might advertise on college, Facebook housing groups, I might advertise on campus bulletin boards, or I might go to groups that are specific for college students like ULoop, which stands for University Loop. And for healthcare workers, there's Furnish Finder, which is a great platform. A lot of travel nurses are on that platform, and a lot of rotating physicians are on that platform as well. The next thing you need to know is how to qualify the tenants. Generally speaking, I want to have at least 3 times the month's rent showing as their monthly income. And if they can't meet that, I most likely will not accept them at the property. The other thing they can show is a large amount of savings. Maybe they have like $10,000 or more in savings. That might be enough to qualify them for the house to be able to cover the rent. Now, I'm very careful with this because, for example, my brother ended up bringing in a tenant, and unfortunately, they were, barely able to cover rent with the money that they were making. I think one of them actually lost their job, and so they would constantly complain about paying the utility bills that they already agreed to pay. There was late rent pretty frequently, and so he had to deal with a lot of those problems because he didn't do the full screening of the tenant and because he didn't collect enough upfront. So the last thing I do is I collect a lot of money up front. I collect a large deposit up front. I will ask for the first month rent, the last month rent, and the security deposit before they even move into the property, which means I basically have 3 months worth of rent before they move in. Now, if the tenant does not feel comfortable putting up that much money, then it might not be the best tenant for you, because you want a tenant who is well qualified, can pay you a good amount up front so you're not worrying later if they just leave and break the lease. And then finally, the last thing I do is I make sure I set expectations. So I typically have a list of house rules in my lease. I want to make sure that it's very clear what the tenant is responsible for and what the landlord is responsible for. Usually utilities are divided evenly among all tenants. And that's all the utilities except for landscaping. Basically, we divide among all the tenants, and the landlord will pay, let's say there's 5 people, then the landlord will only pay a fifth of the utility bill. That's the fairest way of doing it, because honestly, people use different amounts of energies at different times, but it's very impossible to actually figure out how much energy an individual is using. So since you can't track it, the easiest and the most fair way to do this is just to split it evenly among all the tenants. And so a lot of times near the end of the month, I will basically download all the utility bills, add them up, and then divide it equally among the tenants and ask them to pay it with the next month's rent. So that's basically how you get your very first house hack, whether it's a single family home or a duplex or something like that. I hope this was very helpful for you guys. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and I will go ahead and get back to you on them within the week or so. So please make sure you leave those questions down below and give the video a like and subscribe and share it with all your friends or colleagues who are really struggling with getting started in real estate investing so that it can help them out, and also promote the channel to people who are looking for advice. Thank you again for watching this video, and I will see you on next week's video.